I froze mid-hand wash when she whispered, "Move the money now," and my phone buzzed with a $2 million alert at the exact same second. I wasn't supposed to hear that call, but the moment she said she'll never notice, I knew it was my money. If I had checked that notification 10 minutes later, everything would have been gone, including my son. The transfer was already approved. The problem is, I never signed anything. I thought it was a routine alert until I saw my son's name authorizing a $2 million theft. I had less than 10 minutes to stop it, and the only person who could was the one stealing from me. She walked out of that stall like nothing happened, while my entire company was being drained. The photo they sent me wasn't the worst part. It was that my son looked like he knew. I called him for answers, but the silence on the other end told me everything. I drove to that warehouse thinking I was stopping a crime. I didn't expect to find my son running it.
"Move it now. She never checks the secondary account," she whispered, and I froze with my hand still wet under the mall sink because she was in the stall right next to mine and she thought she was alone. The hand dryer roared to life behind me, swallowing half her words, but not the part that mattered, not the quiet confidence in her voice when she added, "Ethan already signed." And something in my chest tightened in a way I couldn't explain, because my son doesn't sign anything tied to my company without calling me first, not once in 30 years, not even for routine approvals. I kept my eyes on the mirror, watching my own expression go still while her heels tapped lightly against the tile, a small, casual sound that didn't match what she was saying. And then my phone buzzed on the counter, a sharp vibration that made me flinch harder than it should have, the screen lighting up with a bank alert I almost ignored until I saw the amount, $2 million, and the authorization name, Ethan Hale. And for a second the room felt too quiet despite the noise around me. I didn't open it right away, just stared at the notification like it might change if I gave it a second, but it didn't. And behind me, the stall door clicked open, footsteps moving toward the exit, steady, unhurried, like nothing had just happened. I turned slightly, catching a glimpse of her reflection as she walked out, already typing on her phone, her face calm in a way that made my stomach drop. And then another buzz hit my screen, this time a text from Ethan. "Busy today, Mom. We'll talk tonight." Too fast, too clean, like it had been sent before I even thought to call him. And that's when the second piece didn't fit. I stepped out into the mall corridor, the air cooler, louder, normal in a way that felt almost wrong. People passing with shopping bags, a kid laughing near a pretzel stand, and I stood there with my thumb hovering over the alert, knowing that once I opened it, there was no pretending this was a mistake. When I finally did, the details loaded slowly, like the system itself was hesitating, and I saw the routing numbers, the timestamp from earlier that morning when I was still on my flight, back a day early without telling anyone, and a vendor name I didn't recognize, sitting there like it belonged. I told myself there had to be an explanation, something procedural, something I'd missed. But then a new message slid across the top of my screen from an unknown number. "Did she hear you?" And I felt that same tight shift in my chest, sharper this time, because whoever sent that text wasn't guessing. They already knew exactly where I'd been standing.
I didn't reply to the unknown number. I just stood there, watching the screen like it might say something else, something worse. But when it didn't, I tapped Ethan's name and called, pressing the phone hard against my ear as I started walking faster toward the parking garage, because standing still suddenly felt like a mistake. It rang longer than it ever had before. 1 ring, 2, 3, then straight to voicemail, which didn't make sense because he had just texted me seconds ago. and that disconnect settled low in my stomach in a way I couldn't shake. I ended the call and tried again, this time already unlocking my car with shaky hands. And when he finally picked up, his voice came quick, almost too quick. "Mum, I said I'm tied up today." And I paused before answering, listening past his words, catching something faint behind him that didn't sound like our office. No familiar hum, no muffled conversations, just a hollow quiet that felt wrong. "Where are you right now?" I asked, keeping my tone even, and there was a beat, just long enough to feel deliberate, before he said, "Office, where else?" But I was already opening the company dashboard on my phone, logging into a deeper panel I hadn't touched in years, the one tied to authorization logs and device access. And for a second it didn't load, the spinning icon dragging just enough to make my pulse climb. When it finally opened, the entries didn't line up, multiple logins under Ethan's credentials, overlapping timestamps from different locations, which should have been impossible unless something was very wrong or someone was helping him. My phone buzzed again, same unknown number, and this time it was a photo, and I hesitated before opening it because part of me already knew it wouldn't be harmless. But when I did, the air left my lungs all at once. It was Ethan, sitting at what looked like his desk, but the angle was off, too far back, like someone had taken it without him noticing. His head turned slightly mid-conversation, unaware. I zoomed in without thinking, catching the reflection in the glass behind him, a second figure just out of frame, and something about the posture made my chest tighten, because it wasn't random, it was deliberate, like they were standing there on purpose. I called him again immediately, and this time he answered faster, breath uneven, and before I could speak, he said, "Lower now. Mum, I can't talk," and I cut him off. "Someone just sent me a picture of you, Ethan. Who's with you right now?" And that's when he went completely silent, not confused, not defensive, just quiet in a way that felt heavier than anything he could have said. And then he muttered, "I'm in a meeting," and hung up before I could push further. I stared at the screen, my reflection faint against the glass, and another message came through from the same number, just 4 words, "Check the authorization log." And for a second I didn't understand why that mattered, until I refreshed the panel and saw a new entry appear in real time, a fresh login under Ethan's credentials from a device still active, and the location tag attached to it wasn't our office, wasn't even close. It was an industrial address I recognized immediately because we used to lease storage there years ago. And as I stared at it, another message came in, shorter this time, "He's not where he says he is," and my hands went cold, because if Ethan wasn't at the office, then whoever I just spoke to either wasn't alone or wasn't safe. I didn't think after that. I just started the car and drove, pulling out too fast, eyes flicking between the road and that active session still glowing on my screen, because if it logged out before I got there, I knew I'd lose whatever chance I had to understand this. The address sat heavy in my mind, not just any warehouse, but one we used years ago for overflow inventory, a place Ethan had been to dozens of times, which made his lie feel less like panic and more like intent, and that realization settled deeper than anything else. Traffic blurred past me in streaks of red and white, my phone buzzing again in the cup holder, another photo, and I almost didn't open it because I already knew what I'd see, but I did anyway. And this time Ethan was looking straight ahead, his face tighter, his posture rigid, and behind him, reflected in the same glass, Ava stood closer now, her hand resting lightly on the back of his chair, like she was keeping him exactly where she wanted him. I called him again, and he picked up immediately, breath uneven, and before I could speak, he said, sharp, urgent, "Don't come here." And that single sentence told me more than anything else had, because he wouldn't warn me unless he knew exactly where I was going. "Log out," I said, gripping the wheel harder. "Ethan, end the session right now." But there was movement on his end, a muffled sound like someone stepping closer, and then the line cut, so suddenly it felt like something had been taken from me mid-sentence. I pulled into the lot minutes later, tires crunching over gravel, the building sitting there quiet, one light on inside, the side door already unlocked when I pushed it open, and that detail, no force, no damage, made it feel planned, not rushed. Inside, the air smelled stale, metallic, and I followed the light down a narrow corridor until I saw them exactly where I knew they'd be. Ethan sitting in front of a laptop, not tied, not restrained, just still in a way that didn't look like freedom, and Ava behind him, phone in her hand, watching me like she'd been waiting. "You got here fast," she said, almost impressed, and I didn't answer her, my eyes locked on Ethan, because he wouldn't look at me, not fully, not yet, and that hurt more than anything else. "End it," I said again, stepping closer, and his hands hovered over the keyboard, shaking just enough to give him away, and that's when he finally looked up, eyes wet, voice breaking in a way I hadn't heard since he was a kid. "I can't," and for a second I didn't understand, not until he added, barely audible, "I built it, Mum. The vendor, the account routing, the approvals, all of it." And the room tilted, because this wasn't something he got pulled into, it was something he started. Ava exhaled softly behind him, almost relieved, like the truth landing in the open was part of her plan, and suddenly the messages, the photos, the timing, it all shifted into something colder, more controlled. "He backed out after the transfer," she said, her voice steady, "so I made sure you'd show up. And I realized then that none of this was about hiding, it was about pressure, about forcing him to finish what he started, with me standing there watching." I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "Ethan, look at me." And when he did, I saw it clearly, the split in him, the part that had already crossed the line, and the part still hesitating at the edge, and I knew whatever happened next wasn't about money anymore. If you log out now, it flags, audits, investigations, everything comes down on you. And she wasn't wrong. I could see it in the system still open on his screen, the session live, the logs updating, something irreversible locking into place. And in that moment I understood the part no one says out loud, that sometimes the worst betrayal isn't the crime itself, it's realizing you're the reason it didn't get stopped.